Justin Bourne. How surprised were you to hear the news about Eugene Melnyk passing away?
Yeah, I guess one of those things where initially quite surprised, but then you look back at, he had a liver transplant a couple years ago, 4 years ago. So, knowing there's some health history there, I guess not entirely.
We'll ask the same question to our next guest, Wayne Scalan, who, of course, covered the Ottawa Senators for many years with the Ottawa Citizen and now writing for Sportsnet, Sportsnet.ca. Man, I got marbles in my mouth today.
It's
I don't
fine.
know what's going on.
No one, I didn't even notice.
Wayne, how are you, pal?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Good. Where do we start? Just in terms of, first and foremost, the news when it hit you, and basically how surprised were many people, including Ottawa fans. I just think about the people that made sure that Eugene Melnyk's name trended at least half a dozen times a year, I think are the same people that woke up this morning and maybe utter disbelief.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Nick. And I think we had heard that, he was in some decline in terms of his health, but I think it's still shocking, when you get the news late last night. And it's interesting you mentioned, his name in the headlines and people being worked up about Eugene Melnyk and maybe something that he said or some direction he was going to take the team. Some of the people that were most, furious with Eugene are the people that are coming out today and expressing, great gratitude and a lot of respect. And, social media is not always a pleasant place to live in, as you know, and it's kind of nice to see the respect and the tributes coming out for Eugene Melnyk. And without him, maybe the Senators may not even be in Ottawa today.
So a complicated legacy then. I think it's fair to say that with Melnyk in regards to Ottawa, the Senators, the NHL, his stewardship of that franchise, how will Senators fans remember Eugene Melnyk, the owner, and his time there?
Yeah, there's positive and not so positive. That's for sure. But I think first and foremost, you think of the guy that came in 2003 and saved the team from being swept out of here and maybe moved to the United States, or God knows what might have happened. But he took them out of bankruptcy, and now on the ice they had a pretty good team. 2003 Eastern Conference final team, and they went on. He guided them to a Stanley Cup final berth in 2007. In 2006, they might have won the Cup if Dominik Hasek doesn't get hurt. So some good times, I think, especially in the first 10 to 12 years of his tenure. After that, they had to rebuild and kind of the downside, and Daniel Alfredsson left the program a couple of times. I mean, he left as a player, and then he left as a member of the executive team. So some difficult times here. This is a guy that was supposed to maybe take the franchise downtown and build a brand new spanking arena close to Parliament Hill. That never happened for a bunch of reasons. But, the fruits and the seeds of the rebuild, they're starting to take root now. And you're seeing it with, some of the great players that they have. So, it's kind of sad. I think he'll be remembered again, that if these guys become competitive in a few years and maybe threaten to win a Stanley Cup, people will be thinking of Eugene Melnyk and how much he would have enjoyed it.
He did have a little Frank Sinatra in it where it was just, I'm going to do it my way. And at times it got in his way. It got in the way of Senator fans. But, man, his passion and his love for his team never wavered one bit, did it? And even the push for people to have him sell this team up until, I'm sure, his last seconds never entered in the equation, did it?
No. He stubbornly hung on. Now, he threatened to move it a couple times. Who can forget? You got the whole hockey world tuned into Ottawa, which doesn't happen all the time. And the game was supposed to take place in Parliament Hill. That couldn't happen because of security reasons, but they still had a great outdoor venue at TD Place. And he happens to, and the commissioner's in town. Gary Bettman's not in Ottawa all the time. And he chooses, this moment to kind of muse about, if I don't get more fans in the stands, maybe I'll just take this franchise out of here. Just kind of thinking out loud, which is just kind of the way that he operated.
Yeah. So, there's lots of questions, not about what has transpired, but what happens next. I believe he has 2 daughters. So what happens with ownership of the Ottawa Senators now?
Well, you can be sure that he's thought this out. He had that transplant, I think it was around 2015 or so. He's been in some, had some health issues since then. I know that he's thought this through. I know that he said repeatedly that this team is going to stay in the family and that his girls were going to own this team for many years to come. So I think it's going to be very interesting in the days and weeks to come to see how this plays out. But, his oldest daughter, I think, is 23. She's either 23 or turning 23 this year. So these are young girls, young women. And so maybe there's a board of directors that helps run things. Maybe they bring in someone else to manage it. I know they brought back Erin Crow. I don't know if you guys know this, but Erin Crow was the best, financial officer they ever had, and they brought her back on board about a year ago. And people thought, what's Erin Crow doing back here? We thought she was long gone. She was an alternate governor at one time of this franchise, and now you can kind of see why. She's the perfect person to maybe pave the groundwork for the succession. So how it's going to go, whether these women decide they're going to sell the team and take their equity out and have someone else operate it, who knows? But that Eugene Melnyk wants the team here, and he wants those young girls looked after. So it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Hey, we're not going to pretend to be estate lawyers or accountants here, but Wayne, this has a chance to be very complicated in the next little while for Ottawa Senator fans. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. But, I think people in Ottawa have always been skittish. I mean, we never thought up here that we'd get a franchise. It was supposed to go to Hamilton. And then we get a team, and no one has confidence that they're going to remain or that we could draw a crowd. I mean, you had 10,000 fans was all you could bring into the old Civic Center, downtown. So there's always been that concern around here that something terrible is just around the corner. So that's never going to change. But, let's hope that, Eugene Melnyk thought this out, and with the interest of the NHL, and Gary Bettman has fought before to keep this team here in Ottawa, and I'm pretty sure that he will again.
That's not in the equation that this team could still get up and leave. Like that's. I would think that if this team went to market, there'd be a number of parties interested in owning the Ottawa Senators.
No question, and I think it's fair to say that some of those bids have been rebuffed in the last several years, because there have been bids to buy this team, to buy it from Eugene Melnyk, and he said no every time. Now, we thought he might take on some partners at some point, just to lessen the burden and maybe, help things out, but, that didn't happen. And now it's just going to be fascinating to see what happens with the ownership of this franchise.
Well, and there's no sense for us in pretending like Melnyk didn't have some opposition and some enemies in some certain fronts. And I wonder if you see any possibility for some things that were once options to become options down the road here. I'm speaking specifically about LeBreton Flats, the potential for a new arena deal. Is that something that you could see becoming relevant once again for the Sens?
Oh, there's no question, Justin. I think that's a really good point. And Melnyk didn't live here. He was Ottawa's kind of a small town. It's a national capital, but it's still kind of a small sports town. And everybody knows everybody else. The OSEG people that run the Red Blacks and the junior hockey team here, the 67s, they're all local people. They've got deep pockets. Whether or not they'd want to get involved in owning the Senators, I don't know. But there are business people here, civic people, the mayor, that are just dying for an opportunity to maybe work with a different sort of partner representing the Ottawa Senators, and whether that's members of the Melnyk family or a board of directors, but just some people that couldn't make it work with Eugene Melnyk. Trinity Developments, I mean, they have a lawsuit pending against Melnyk over the whole LeBreton debacle when it fell apart. So I think you're right. I think everything's a possibility now.
Everything is a possibility, and I'm just wondering now, Wayne, if you've had a pulse on the community, is it going to be good enough for them to maybe have Melnyk's daughters own the team and obviously work it through estate lawyers or Aaron or anyone else, and that's going to be good enough? Or will they see this as a clean slate to bring in new ownership, billionaire ownership, where they don't have to worry about nickel and diming like we've seen in the last little while? And is it also an opportunity for the NHL to have a clean slate with new ownership, with deep pockets, and not, possibly maybe even go against maybe Eugene's wishes of leaving it to his daughters? Do you see that scenario at all?
Well, I think it is possible, and we haven't heard from these women yet whether that's really what they want their future to be. That they want to be involved in an NHL franchise like their father. We don't know that, so I think that has to play out. But I don't think there's any question, Nick, that this organization needs an infusion of capital and infusion of belief. Fans need to believe in something. It's been 5 years. This will be 5 years this spring without a playoff berth. You're going to have to pay these guys. Like they paid Brady Tkachuk this year, but there's a whole bunch more coming down the pipe with Josh Norris and Tim Stützle and all these other guys. Jake Sanderson just arrived in Ottawa and starting his, what should be an illustrious career. He'll have to be paid down the road. So it's great having these high draft picks and the great talent, but you got to pay them too, and that's going to be, in the years to come. So that's all got to come together, in some form, whether it's a group ownership, a board, one very wealthy individual, however it shakes out. This team, it definitely needs a little bit of a boost.
And whether it is left in the family or new ownership,